Good morning, barely morning. It's nearly lunchtime, 11:30 in on June 3rd today. In It's Vaughan in Nova Scotia. So I'm going to do a mixed video of different things I'm going to throw. I got an order here for a big plant pot, and then I've got a whole bunch of clay here to just make a bunch of maybe some lotion pump bottles and some salad dressing bottles, and also a bird bottle that I do. But anyway, see how long this goes. It's a very rainy day in Nova Scotia, and yeah, you can have a quick look out there. It's very grey today. We've got that steely grey sky, steely grey ocean. Alright, so see if we can get a good view down here. You won't see me, you can just see the pot though. Let's see if we can get this really low down. You might see it better. I don't know if you'll see my arms more than the pot though. Let's see. That might be good. Alright, let's see. So I got my clay all ready. And I cleaned all my bats. This is one of those bats I think you've seen in other videos, which I had a friend make for me, and I did a little work on them, but basically he made these, and they cost me about $5 a piece. Now the planter has to be 9 inches high by 10 inches across when it's fired. So I've got here a big piece of clay, so this would be about 7.5 pounds. Yes, so this is about 7.5 pounds of clay. So this is too big, I think, so I'll see what I get. A very specific size, so I have my tape rule sitting right there so I can measure it. My guess is this is way too much clay. But remember, a 9-inch tall pot has to be about 10 when you throw it. And because it's for a specific plant, this guy needs, I guess I should make sure it's no smaller than 9 inches high when it's finished and fired in the kiln. This clay is 519 from Pottery Supply House in Ontario. So it's a big piece, so I'm doing the coning method to kind of center it. It's brand new clay, so there's no air bubbles, hopefully. There we go. So how wide at the bottom, which he didn't say, so I'm going to say that's about 7 inches. So it'll taper a little bit outwards. So you go, big piece of clay, I'm going to put 2 sets of fingers on top of each other and push down till it dries out, and let go slowly. Fill it full of water so we've got plenty of lubrication to open it up. Drying out already. I'll use 2 hands. Slow the wheel down a touch. Then get the sponge and just kind of compress the bottom. I don't get S-cracks anymore, but when I first learned in, where was it? Penistone Grammar School in South Yorkshire. Greg Allen was my teacher. Anyway, I used to get S-cracks. And then after a while, when I was told to press harder, that's all the answer was every time, press harder. Somebody said, why don't you take your fingers and opposite push back in from the outer wall to the center, because we open it up like that. So he said if you push back that way, you'll recompress the clay in a different direction and maybe even out those molecules in there, the structure of the clay itself. And it's worked ever since. Good tip there. So give a pull up until it feels like it's drying out a little bit. Slow the wheel down. Big pieces tend to flare out if you're opening them up too fast, but you want to keep it tapering while it's under control. So the wheel's going about 1/3 of the speed as when I center. So push in again, slowly with the wheel. Every rotation you're about 1 centimeter higher. Compress the rim. I like the rain in Nova Scotia though, because this building is on the water, which is why you can see the water right outside the window. There's water on 3 sides of the building. And I don't have any running water in this building, so I have to have rainwater to be able to work. And we've just gone through about 2.5 weeks with no rain, so every rain barrel I had was empty. So this was good timing. In the summer we can go 6 to 8 weeks without rain. It's hard. I have to bring water in from my building across the road, which is the gallery I've shown in other videos. So dribble the water right on the rim so it goes down inside and outside. And then compress again, fingertips together, and pull up. And then I'm going to give it a measure. I'm hoping it'll be about 10 inches high at this after this pull. At least 10 inches high anyway. I'm going to leave it thicker at the top. It's a plant pot, so it might get a little bit of hammer. So now I'm going to dry off the clay on the inside. When you do a pull and you've got all the water out, it'll stay evenly moist all the way up the wall. You can still do a pull without actually much water in between your fingers. The problem you have usually when you're doing a pull is that the clay is really wet in one place, then it'll get dry and your fingers stick, and then as it's spinning it gets to a wet spot again, your fingers go fast. So your pull is uneven, so it's a good idea just to drag the sponge a couple of times all the way from the bottom to the top if you're going to do a pull where you don't need much water in there, and then you'll be able to keep pushing without your fingers sticking. Alright, so let's measure it. Oh, look at that. I'm only 9¼ inches high, so I've got to go one more pull. So let's see. I don't think I'm going to have to wet it again. I thought it was 10 inches. It feels 10 inches. So maybe I do need this much clay. I thought this would be way too much clay. And that's why I'm going to try. I was trying to get the water off because this clay is quite soft. But I think we'll have the 10 inches this time. And I've got to get the water off this fast because it's got a tiny wobble in there. That's easy because you use the metal rib and just even out. The longer you leave the water on the clay, the more it softens down, so I like to get it off as soon as I can. I've got to have 10 inches height there. Usually if you do a pull, you're going to raise the wall of the clay at least 1 inch or 2 each time. There's a little thin spot just there. There you go, just got that. I have to work on that bit because it's a little thinner than the other area. Okay, so now let's measure it. Bet it's going to be 10.5 this time. Oh, it's 10.25. That's good. Now, what is the width though? He wants about 9-10 inches across too. That's 11, so that's a little big. Now, what's that going to shrink? No, actually, 11 is good, because if it shrinks down to 10 inches, which it will, that's perfect. So I'm just going to drag the water off and then give it a slightly better shape. That's a much bigger pot than I was visioning in my brain. It's funny when we think of sizes, like a coffee mug is about 4.5 inches high, maybe 5, and you think, wow, you know, this is huge compared to a coffee mug. Well, obviously not. Okay, so let's just give it a slight better shape. It's quite thin. I'm surprised I'm still holding this upwards, keeping it up rather, because there's a couple of spots that seem really pretty thin. And this is a talc based body, if I remember right, as well. It's really smooth and it fires really white. I'll do a video later on when the sun comes out of the outside of the building, because we've got it all set up now for the summer season. I was going to go buy flowers today to put in pots, but it's actually too rainy. Should have done it yesterday. There we go. Where's my sponge gone? Now it's really, as I said, quite thin. The rim is quite thick, which is good, because that's the bit I always feel like people will knock. There you go. I'm just going to set up the bottom so I don't hardly have to trim this. There you go. It's good if you can do most of the work in the throwing stage rather than having to trim a lot off later on. There you go. Just get a bit of that off the rim. I'm not going to compress the rim on this because it's so thin just under the rim there. There we go. That is a surprise. I got these other balls of clay here. I was going to try and, I was feeling like they would be more correct for the sizing of this, but way different to what I thought. I'm going to have to try and get this off here now. Do it very gently since it's quite thin. These bats, the white ones, are a little bit thin for lifting off because the piece always bends a little bit. There you go. Big 11 inches tall by about 10 inches wide. Alright, that was 7.5 pounds of clay. So now I've got some pieces here that are just under 4 pounds of clay. And this is a little trial thing. Let's try one and see how big you can get something. Since after 40 years of experience there, I was totally off by 50%, because I actually got the shape, the size that I needed, with but it took a lot more clay than I thought I was going to need, because this is only just under 4 pounds of clay. So how big can we make a plant pot with 3¾ pounds of clay, we'll say. What's that, about 1.5 kilos, I guess. But when I'm talking to customers on the telephone and people are ordering things, I will often price things off the top of my head when they tell me how big something is. And you can make a huge mistake that way, because obviously you just saw it took twice as much clay to get that I thought I was going to need. So maybe I should remember this next time I get an order on the telephone, because I might end up underpricing by a lot. There you go. Now that one had a wide base on it, because I was thinking, I didn't ask him how wide at the bottom, but my pots usually have a traditional sort of shape. Now here we go. See how tall sounded. See how high it was? It was only about 2 inches tall at the beginning. And that's why I think you can raise an inch or two every pull you do, at least. When the clay's thicker, you can go up a lot more. My finger's stuck to that too, so I'm wetting it a lot that time. Start the pull, coming up. Proportions are important, so I'm guessing by having a pot that wide at the bottom, which is a lot narrower than the last one, that I will probably only get to about 8-9 inches in width. And that's a really big difference between just under 4 pounds of clay and 7.5 pounds of clay. There you go, leave that little extra clay right on the rim. Wet it, dribble inside and outside. And now I feel like we've got the height that we're going to get with this thickness of the wall is already starting to be thin down there. Go. I planted a whole bunch of carrots last night, so this rain is really good for them. Now let's get the water off it. Let's start at the top and just pull that water off. I'm going to try doing the shaping with the clay quite dry. And then get it out of the inside. It's clearing up a little bit. I have 4 rain barrels connected outside the building there, and there were 2 of them full this morning. So when I have a little device that moves the water from one direction to another, from one barrel to another. So I changed it, and that barrel was about half full last time I looked. So it wasn't as much rain as I'd hoped. Yeah, 4 rain barrels will last me 2-3 weeks, as long as I'm not watering plants. There you go. See, now this is dry. I've taken the water off all the way on the inside, and on the outside there's just that little wet spot just there. Now it's dry over there too. Let's see if I can pull that out just a touch more. I'm going to try to get that 9 inches width before it gets too much of a wobble. Yeah, the garden's beginning to do well. I've got about 65 potato plants, all with leaves above the soil now. It was down to about 4 degrees centigrade again, not last night, the night before. So we've got to be a little careful about what we put in, but I would like to put broccoli, cauliflower and all the brassicas in tomorrow. So I'm going to look at the 7-day forecast, make sure we're not going to go down below, say, 8 degrees at night, because they won't like it if it's any lower than that. There's a bunch of videos I watched for gardening by a guy called Charles Dowding in England. I think he's in Devon or Somerset. He has a much milder climate there. Okay, let's see if I can widen it, because I don't think that's the... if it's going to end up being 9 inches. But I'd like to get it 10 inches across just so that it'll shrink to 9. But I don't think I got anywhere near the height on this one, do you? I don't think so. Let's give it a measure. So, 7.5 inches high. So I'm 1.5 inches from the finished firing height. So we know this amount of clay, which was 3 3/4 pounds, is nowhere near enough to get. But it does give me a 7.5 inch now. So it'll be about a 6 3/4 inch planter height wise when it's finished, and width wise. 11 inches, we got the width. We just didn't get the height and all that. So if you want to make that note, you can say, well, for a 10-inch high planter, I'm just going to belly it a little bit there as well. A 10-inch high planter, you will actually need twice as much clay as you would for a 6.5, 7-inch planter. See, now it's totally dry on the outside, but I'm able to really shape it just by pressing with the inside where it's also dry. One guy I knew called it dry throwing. There you go. Now I'm going to put that little extra ridge in there. There we go. This one doesn't have that thin spot either. So I was actually getting that last planter. It got the size that I needed, but I used twice as much clay and it's still pretty thin. So just amazing, isn't it? The same width, but the height difference is about 3 inches, but you need twice as much clay to get that extra 3 inches. Now in different clay bodies you might not need that. Of course, if it was a gritty clay body, maybe it wouldn't be quite as wobbly if you get it too thin. But gritty clays will soak down and get soft really quick. This is how I shake the bottom, just to kind of, so I don't have to trim. Plus it's an overhang, so when I'm glazing I can hold it upside down easily and it won't fall out of my hands. So you can grip with your fingertips a little easier. Alrighty, does that look decent? Let's see if I can get it off. Oh, it's a bit stuck on the bat again. These ones today the bats seem to be sticking down quite hard. There we go. Okay, that's a nice shape. I like it better than the other one. But anyway, I think that's decent. I think I'll call it quits on the video, because you've seen two planters different, and it's good for that assessment of weights. And I'll do another video later on, maybe to do the narrow forms, bottles and lotion dispenser, pump dispenser things. Alrighty, thanks for stopping in and visiting Nova Scotia. This is Vaughan Smith, westcoatbellpottery.ca. You can call me, leave a message if you need something. Right, thank you. Bye.